Welcome to the next session in our Student Development Conference. My name is Shireen, and I am a member of the Southern African Student Archaeological Council with my portfolio as social media and events representative. With me today is Mariette Harcombe, our chair, and as well Kalita Shadrack, who is responsible, or is our secretary, and then Ms. Mpumi Maringa, who is a shadow member of the SOS Council. So welcome everyone. Mpumi is also the host for our session, so I'll hand over to her.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Okay, so I have the great opportunity to present and to introduce our guest speaker for today, who is Mariette Harcombe. So Mariette is a PhD student or graduate in ancient Near Eastern sites from UNISA, and her research falls on material science, specifically in 3D imaging or nuclear imaging of objects and artifacts. She is a co-director of Heritage Works and a public archaeology company that provides archaeological experience to prospective students and members of the public. So today she will be presenting a presentation on public archaeology. Right, over to you, Mariette.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Mpumi. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great stuff. So today's talk is about public archaeology, what it means and why it matters. So I'm presenting on behalf of myself and my colleague Karen Scott. She's a co-director of Heritage Works. So who and what is Heritage Works? Like I said, it's a co-directorship between myself and Karen Scott. We are a public archaeology company, so we run a few public archaeology, public participation and public engagement projects. So how did this all start? That's a good question. All right, so we identified somewhat of a gap in terms of archaeology students. When you graduate, right, you finish university, your university qualification equips you with all of the essential skills that you need to go out into the world and be a practicing archaeologist. So those we see as kind of like the essentials for you to survive, right? But there's somewhat of a gap between that survival that you get, and like qualification, and actual enrichment opportunities after that, right? Because we all graduate as students, and then the moment that happens, if you're not, involved in a postdoc, or you get a position on faculty, or you're actually employed by whichever like heritage management company, then there's no further opportunities for you to like enrich yourself. And that is the gap we want to cross. So we want to offer enrichment opportunities, not just for existing or registered students, but also for those who have graduated, and especially members of the public who often get left behind when it comes to archaeology. So what we wanted to do was to start off with a number of short courses. So this is in terms of public engagement. We're engaging the public with archaeological content, right? And we, through our courses, we have different objectives, okay? So we want to target members of the public who have always been interested in archaeology, but have never had the time to enroll, or that, it's now kind of past their study due date, but they're still interested in archaeology, or even in some cases, they are high school students thinking about a career, and they want to know more about archaeology to make a more informed decision on whether or not this is actually the career for them. So we started off with an introduction to archaeology course back in 2011. All of our courses have, a course manual that covers the topics, and we try and balance it in terms of 60% theory maximum and 40% practical activities, because we all learn a lot better if there are fun activities to participate in. So the first one was just a basic introduction to archaeology. And from that group, we have had, interestingly, 7 university students, which were mostly undergraduate students. We had 2 museum employees and 3 members of the public. And we marked that down as a success. In 2012, you can see the figures there changed a little bit. It was 2 high school learners. This was actually the first time we had high school learners interested in archaeology who participated. A pensioner who has had a love for archaeology his entire life, but never found a welcoming community or group which welcomed him and said, okay, you know what, we want to teach you about archaeology, you're interested, come and join us. One university student, and then 4 members of the public who were just randomly there because they've always been interested in archaeology. So a lot of the practical activities included mock excavations, site drawings, garbology interpretation sessions, basic sorting and tagging of artifacts. Our next course, and I'm excited about this one because Rina is going to present one of the sessions for the Student Development Conference. And this was a 2-day course in which Rina taught us about the basics of bead identification within the beads from the archaeological record. So she showed us how to measure beads, size them, identify them by color and different physical characteristics. And then the importance of beads within the archaeological record in terms of inferring aspects of trade and so on. And what you can see in the bottom corner here is one of our practical activities where you tell the story of your life through beads, which was a nice activity because the different beads that we presented the students with represented different important events in their lives. And then the students would exchange the beads and they would read the life story of that individual without knowing it, without having chatted to them beforehand. And they would read the story of their lives through beads. And that's basically what beads tell us. They tell us a lot about the people who used them in ancient times. The next course that we did was on stone tools. Once again, a 2-day course with a course material. And we had a lot of fun. This was probably the most fun workshop we did. We had Graham Reeks, who is a geologist by trade and studied archaeology in later life. He recently completed his PhD. And he taught us about, rock mechanics, stuff that you don't necessarily think about when you think about stone tools. There's actually, you have to have the right material in order to make a stone tool. And the ancients definitely had skills. So what we did with our stone tools is we hafted them to make spears. And we had a grassy gazelle, which is still living, and it's been abused a few times at conferences and other student workshops. Some of you might have taken pot shots at this one already. And so this kind of then ties in with a bit of experimental archaeology because you're actually making kind of authentic stone tools and you're applying what the ancients applied. You're doing what they did. They made spears. They hunted animals. This is Graham. He made an atlatl, which is a tool that helps you to get a lot more distance on your spear. And then this was a really fun activity. We actually had a bush pig already slaughtered, and we skinned the bush pig using the stone tools. And these were stone tools we made during the workshop, and they were sharp. That you could cut yourself. So there was a disclaimer to students like, you can't sue us if you cut yourself with the stone tools you made. But this was such a, once again, diving into experimental archaeology and having a lot of fun and learning while actually having fun. Tim Forsman presented a rock art interpretation course to us. We were lucky enough to have his recently published book as a companion to our study guide. And once again, practical activities just enrich the learning experience. We use different natural materials to make our own paints. And we made our own rock art. And each individual got to take home their rock art. And, once again, we remember the lessons we learned through trial and error. And this was also, once again, a bit of experimental archaeology and lots of fun. I can't reiterate the fun part enough. We've had a few archaeology and bone identification courses because my colleague Karen Scott, she's an archaeologist. So she has been working with faunal connections for decades now. And especially with the 2015 course, we had such a wide variety of participants. We had members of the general public, we have semi-skilled and professional individuals, university students, and then 1 or 2 kids. You don't know what type of fun activities you do today will, inspire future scientists and researchers. So specifically with that 2015 workshop that we did, we had the forensic team from the South African Police Force come and attend the bone course. Now, even though the bone course is aimed primarily at archaeological faunal identification, this helped them considerably because the police forensic guys are trained specifically to identify mostly human remains, and a lot of times animal remains get misidentified, and it ends up taking a lot of time from the forensics unit's hands to, to work with these mis-ID stuff. So even archaeological knowledge can sometimes be applied to other fields and other areas. So those courses basically represent the public engagement. We're just sharing our knowledge, we're engaging with the public. The next part is the actual public participation, which is something we didn't really envisage when we started Heritage Works. But in 2013, when we went to go and see our colleague, Prof. Anton van Vollenhoven, who is the owner of Archaeology, we went to him and said, okay, can you take us on a site visit, as part of one of our courses, so that participants can just, get to visit an actual archaeological site. And he said, well, do you want to excavate it? And we're like, yeah. This is an excellent opportunity, let's actually excavate this site. And this is where the public participation element came in, is now we can actually take students to an archaeological site and have them excavate. So, of course, this comes with a lot of responsibility. And this is a question that we've been asked quite frequently is, how do you take members of the public who aren't trained into the field to actually do archaeological field work? Okay, because it is a responsible, an activity that comes with some responsibility, right? So the thing is, we train them, we guide them, we supervise them, and under those circumstances, we believe there's no reason why you can't include the public in archaeological fieldwork projects. So we started off by condensing our 4-day sandwich course into a 2-day intensive induction program. So we used the same manual, which covers basically all the topics that you need to go into the field for the first time. It's, what is expected of an archaeologist, real life versus pop culture. How do we identify archaeological sites? What types of sites do we encounter? What types of artifacts do we find? The importance of record keeping in terms of photography, illustration, documentation, law and legislation, where you can study if you're interested in studying, where you can study. What are the types of career options that await you, and the fields of specialization. And then, of course, also importantly, how to actually share your knowledge with other people in terms of research and publication. So once again, a lot of theoretical work, but then focusing on the practical aspects. Setting up grids. We had a fun garbology exercise and just teaching basic techniques like simple troweling techniques, for example. So what we do is we have the 2-day introductory course, and then we have 5 days of field work. And it's not play, it's real field work. We work very hard. All right. So we start off with a site introduction. And since we've been busy already now, since 2013, that's 6 field seasons. So every field season we go back, we've got a longer site intro because we found new stuff. We exposed more of the site, exposed more features. And so we introduce people to the site so that they're fully aware of, what's expected of them. And then they meet our trench commanders. So our trench commanders are experienced honors, well, not honors, postgraduate students in archaeology with ample fieldwork experience. So they know what they are doing. And we divide the participants into groups. So each group is then led by a trench commander, and they are all supervised by members of the project team, who are professional, qualified, experienced archaeologists. And when working with members of the public, obviously you need to focus on people's strengths instead of their weaknesses, because sometimes you get pensioners and you can't make pensioners do all the heavy lifting. So you kind of also have to gauge your participant group. It's not just a bunch of, everyone's a young student in the early 20s. You kind of have to work with people from different ages and different experiences, and give each and every one equal opportunity to experience the different activities on site. And like I said, equal opportunities. This is a big learning experience, and above all, we want to be inclusive, let everyone try their hands at almost every aspect of fieldwork archaeology. We do surveying, we do some map work, they get to work with total stations, they help set up grids. Each participant is given a field diary and they submit that field diary at the end of the week. So it's not just play, they have to make proper notes. And they get a chance at sorting, at identifying objects, at bagging, tagging, taking their own photographs, making their own illustrations. And this is a working site. So obviously we, as the professional archaeologists, we still do everything like we should do. We should still take our own professional measurements, our own professional photographs, do our own professional illustrations, and do our own field diaries and field reports. But everyone gets a hand at the different components of archaeology. So like I mentioned, participants are always under constant supervision and guidance from the project team and the trench commanders. So there's always demonstrations and participation in every aspect, like I mentioned. But then, of course, there's a constant checking that material is correctly sorted and bagged, helping the participants with challenging processes. I mean, we work with a very rocky terrain with a lot of stone walling, and a lot of roots. It's frustrating. So cutting a profile, for example, is not something that you would leave up to one of the new participants to do, because they're just going to dig a hole in your profile. And then, of course, illustrations and photography and so on, the stuff that we allow the students to exercise, but we still do everything good and proper at the end of the day. So a very important aspect is not only involving the public to actually participate, but also to come and visit the site. And we have set open days, but also anyone who contacts us and says, listen, I'm interested in what you're doing on the site, they book an appointment, and then one of the project team will take them around the site and show them some of the artifacts and show them around. So with our open day, we've had the PAX, which is the Pretoria Archaeology Club for Schools. They brought a group of students from the Mamelodi area in Pretoria East to come and visit the site. They had a lot of fun there. They tried their hands at excavating a little square on their own, and they were so excited about the smallest things they found. It was really so inspiring for us to see, members of the public and students especially interacting with the archaeological material. And what is interesting about the site also is that it's situated in the midst of a suburban area. It's in Pretoria East. It's the kopje that overlooks Pretoria University's farmland area, the agricultural holdings. And so a lot of people, like this lady and her dog, they go for their morning walks, and all of a sudden, oh, okay, here's activity on the kopje that I'm not used to. And here's someone friendly approaching them and saying, would you like to learn more about archaeology? And we give them a quick site tour and show them stuff. And it's every year we get more visitors from the community, because word of mouth, people say, hey, those dust diggers are up on the site again. If you see a plume of dust going up in Pretoria East along Queen's Highway, you should know the archaeologists are there. Go and ask them some questions. So welcoming visitors on a site is mutually beneficial, because they get something out of it. They get an educational experience. But what has happened now on 2 occasions is visitors from the area come, and then they have their own expertise to share with us that relate to the site. There's 2 individuals on the image on the left are actually military veterans, and they know a lot about ammunition, and they know a lot about the Boer War. Because what I forgot to mention is the site, East Fort, was a British redoubt, a little small pop-up fort, like the English used to have during Boer War. So it's from that period. So these 2 military veterans who know their ammunitions and they know about the Boer War came and said, oh, well, have you thought about this? Have you looked at this? Have you checked this resource? And, bringing books along and, sometimes stuff we already know, but it's just here and there you get someone who says, have you thought about it in this way? Have you thought about it in that way? And then you think, oh, I actually haven't. And that's the value of getting people on site from different walks of life and different fields of expertise. The gentleman on your right, wow, that was fantastic, because somehow his family has been living in the area for I don't know how many decades. And he actually had a copy of one of the diaries of one of the soldiers who was on the fort during its occupation, something that wasn't available in any archive. I think it was handed down, some kind of family heirloom, right? And it was like, wow, here's this blow my blow account of the materials that got delivered to sites to erect a structure. And they're referring to a canteen, and they're referring to stables. Today we started working on the stables on the northern side of the copy. And we're like, okay, well, we suspected that the stables were there, but now there's a definite link that we didn't have before. Because, I mean, the British weren't really that concerned in keeping very formal records in their pop-up sites because they were semi-permanent structures. So in any case, that was a really good surprise. And also what we found from people in the community, people who have been living there for decades, is people rocking up and then they have photos of the fort, like from the 1960s and 70s, from when the fort was in a much better condition, obviously, than it is now. When some of the stone walling was actually still like 8 or 10 feet high, and some of the actual corrugated walling was still there in those photographs. And obviously all of that is gone today. And then we get someone who just pops up and says, no, this is a photo from my family album. Once again, something that you're not going to find in the archive. And well, like I said earlier, this is an actual archaeological excavation. There's a lot of work that goes in there. And like you can see, from the first day to the last day of excavations, we move a lot of soil, we move a lot of rock, and it's hard work, but it's done good and proper and in a professional manner. But then, of course, all professionality aside for a minute or two from time to time, is we also get to enjoy a very British tea break on a very British fort. We had Earl Grey tea and scones. So, and of course, once again, if you don't have fun, then what's the point? Yeah, so you have to add a little bit of fun and games in between the whole learning experience. And yeah, so what we've learned from working with the public is, in our opinion, it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor, right? And the thing is, if you start small and you dream big, that's just the way to go. I know a lot of professional archaeologists are kind of, hesitant to include members of the public on fieldwork expeditions, but start small, start with 1 or 2 people. You can see, if people are passionate about a thing, why not involve them? And listen to your participants, because sometimes someone from an engineering background will give you insight about a structure on a site, because you're asking questions as to why did they build it in this way, and then the engineer will come and say, well, according to sound engineering principles, this is why they did it, and you get a lot of insight into that. So never stop revising and improving. Everything is a learning curve. You won't get it 100% right the first time. Working with the public is always challenging, but it definitely is rewarding. And you learn from your audience, you learn, their levels of appreciation for your study material, for example, and your practical activities. So adapt and survive, I think, is a good phrase to use. And involve in existing students. You get so much dedication out of people when you trust them, when you show them you trust them, when you give them the responsibility of leading a group of newcomers and getting the opportunity to convey their knowledge and their skills. And, engage, socialize, have a relaxed and friendly demeanor. I think that's one of the things that people often fear academics in a way, because they come across as hoity-toity and I'm Professor so-and-so and Dr. so-and-so. But I think also that's kind of changing. People don't behave like that anymore. I mean, people are becoming really down to earth, no matter if they're Dr. so or Professor so-and-so. So always keep a friendly demeanor and just relax, man. Life is not that serious. And once again, share your research. And that's one of the key principles of public engagement, is you want to get back to people. You want to tell them you were involved in this project. You provided us with information or insights, or you actually helped to excavate the site. This is the research that we produced. We published it open access. Here's the research. Go and look at it. Right. Share your knowledge with people. All right. And that is basically that. As a final note, because of the coronavirus outbreak, we couldn't have the field season in 2020. So we couldn't go into the field last year. But we are going into the field. I'm checking the calendar now. It's from the 10th to the 16th of July. So anyone who is interested in joining us, go and check out our Facebook page. Where just check Heritage Works on Facebook and follow us there for details. So yes, that is me.
All right, thank you so much, Mariette.
It's a pleasure.
That was a very, very informative presentation.
Thanks.
We learned a lot as well. We know that the public, they do have a lot of knowledge within themselves, and it's also greatly appreciated when they do come to us as well and help us when they see us, because they're very inquisitive and we always like, let's feed your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also support the fact that we need to approach them as they approach us, with a good demeanor, relaxed. Everybody wants to learn from each other. We have to be respectful and humble. And that's also, that information helps us a lot. And making that information open to them as also something that they can understand. Because you know, when you find articles, you find it's just like, it's too much. Even if you are a student, you're just like, that's a lot of information. And the English is a bit too high for us all, and just like, it's too much. So I agree with having public participation, making things more understandable for people so then they can see it, what we're doing. Because when you get people asking you, like, what does an archaeologist do? They just dig all the Indiana Jones, and that's not exactly what we are. Or Tomb Raider. So
we once had a reporter from a local newspaper come to the site. Now that you mentioned the Archaeology Jones thing, Indiana Jones thing, and we actually want to move away from the Indiana Jones image, but we didn't tell her, don't, and like her heading, like digging for treasure in the east of Pretoria, our students play Indiana Jones. Like, no, we should have been there. That's not what we do. Don't spread the stereotypes. But yeah.
So yeah. But I am happy that you guys are doing this, especially including the schools. So that's the best thing as well. So hopefully we'll get more people to do and participate in the excavation at these ports. And with that, I'd like to open any questions, open the question and answer session. So if anybody has questions, you're most welcome to ask Mariette.
Okay, I'll go. Oh, okay, Shireen, you go ahead.
No, you go. No, go, Felisa.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mariette. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Mariette. That was a really, really exciting presentation. And it's a very interesting topic as well. So I quite enjoy the topic of public archaeology because I do think at this point where we are all at globally, but specifically in Africa, it's very much the approach of being very anti the elitist nature that a lot of science portrays, I think. And, first and foremost, everything we do should be for the public and for public history, universal history, really. That said, however, I just want to understand from your point of view and your project's point of view and your organization, how do you navigate the murky waters associated with archaeology enthusiasts, or sometimes called amateur enthusiasts, in consideration of the historical relationship with these groups, professional archaeologists, as well as our archaeological and history record in general? Because I think it's exceptional, everything that you do and propose. I guess I'm asking if you're doing or if there is a need, in your opinion, for not only including the public in archaeological activities, but also educating individuals and groups, because historically it's been a very certain type of group that's affiliated with public archaeology and amateur archaeology. Do you educate individuals on the pros and cons historically, the sort of narratives that have been typically pushed within these groups, and why they are so detrimental to the archaeological record as well as to the peoples it represents, and change their view to a more, say, objective understanding view of not just individual groups, but the interaction of multiple groups, particularly in South Africa?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, and also raises a few important concerns. But like you said, like, the key to all of this is education. And we find we don't have a lot of, let's say, amateur archaeology groups that go out and they dig sites, you know, and try and play archaeologists. We fortunately don't have a lot of those per se, but we do have quite a large metal detecting community in Southern Africa. And we actually, I think there was a session at a few ASAPA conferences ago where we discussed the problem, but calling it a problem, the issue of metal detecting groups within South Africa, because they do a lot of harm to the archaeological record. And they also kind of perpetuate, like you said, a lot of, you know, historical stereotypes and outdated ideas, are not very scientific ideas, you know, about history and also about archaeology as a practical discipline. So the important thing is the education aspect, you know, engaging with these groups and saying, you know, we've seen that you have this, you know, this enthusiast group, that here's this opportunity to come and learn more, to come and engage and to come and participate. And what you find then is people change their minds, because, you know, people aren't as hard-headed and stubborn as we think. The moment you see that, the moment you show that you are interested in teaching them and including them, and they come and they participate, then they say, now I understand why I shouldn't do things like I've been doing them. Now I understand, you know, like the law, we teach them, there's an entire chapter on the law and, you know, legal requirements in order to just go and do a site visit and, you know, do a preliminary investigation on a site, never mind to do an actual excavation. And the moment they, you know, start understanding why we say, don't do this independently, this is a professional field, then, you know, they say, okay, well, maybe I want to keep on, you're not going to lose my interest in archaeology, but I'm going to pursue it differently in future. So education, that helps.
Awesome.
Did that fully answer your question?
Yeah, no, it did, definitely. I think as much as the responsibility is on us as professionals, we share this record with every single person in the world. And thus the responsibility should be maybe not equally shared, but shared to some degree. And like you said, education is the only way to really do that.
Yeah. Yeah, once you get, the only way that we're going to get people more interested in preserving heritage is involving them with heritage. I think that's a key take-home point of public archaeology at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have questions?
Yes, I do. My question kind of leads from Kalita's question and the idea of education. You know, we've been lucky with the student development workshop to have heritage work present at past workshops, and we've done the bead workshop with Rina, as well as the spear napping and the making of spears, which I know were two activities that our students in past SDWs have enjoyed. So I want to ask Mariette, like the sessions you present have benefits in terms of education, not only for the public, but current students, but prospective students or future archaeologists, as you've mentioned as well. So I was just wondering, what is the type of feedback you've received from prospective students or amateur archaeologists who have done your course and have gone on to study archaeology formally at an institution, how has participating in the courses that you provide help them or make them the decisions they had to make in terms of a career a lot better or clearer?
Okay, yeah. I'll start my answer with a bit of a backstory from when I was working for UNISA Archaeology. This was back in 2010. We went to excavate the site, Magoro Hill. And one of our students, I won't mention any names, but one of our students, I think he was in his 3rd year already, and it was his first fieldwork experience. And he genuinely went in, he had the whole, I think he bought a wardrobe especially just to fit in, kind of like and look like an Indiana Jones type. He had the most fantastic sunglasses. He was sitting on rocks posing for the most fantastic photos. But like by day 3, his demeanor completely changed, and he looked really depressed because he was sitting there and saying, you know, is this archaeology? Because we hadn't discovered any golden rhinos or any crystal skulls. And he's just like, okay, but this is not what I expected archaeology to be. And at that stage, 3rd year, you've wasted 3 years of your life going into a field that you had misconceptions over. And he actually went, and when the day we got back, the next day he changed courses, he changed majors, he went go study something else. And you know, that's something that we want to avoid, is we want to make people, you know, make them informed so that they can make better decisions, because it's your career, it's your life. And we found some 1st year students who have not been able to go on an excursion because it's sometimes limited to, sometimes only in your 3rd year do you get a chance to go out into the field. So we've had a few 1st year students who, you know, say, this is 100% what I thought it was going to be. I'm so happy I made the correct decision. And then there's someone else who say, I'm going to go on with archaeology, but I'm going to go into lab work. Maybe field work is not my thing. Maybe analysis is my thing, right? Maybe I'm a good researcher in terms of looking at stuff that other people excavated. And that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be a field archaeologist. You can be a lab archaeologist. In fact, I think we need more people doing lab work, because we have a lot of collections in our museums and universities and holding institutions that don't get looked at. And then we've had, I think, about a total of 9 or 10 high school students, of which I think about 3 went on to go and enroll for archaeology. Right. So that doesn't sound like a very high success rate, but you know, the purpose of these public participation projects, when we get especially to high school students, is we're not recruiting future archaeologists, we're informing decisions. And I think 3 out of 10 is not too bad, because that's an informed decision. That's probably, I'd rather have 3 people go on to master's and PhD level because I made a decision now that suited them, opposed to getting 6, signing 6 people up, and then 5 of them drop out. So I think that's,
yeah. And you raise an important point, I think, for current students as well, maybe students listening to this session, being informed in what's possible, what types of techniques can be used, what type of research can be done. You know, it's very important, and it does kind of lead you into the direction you want as a career. And if we don't have informative sessions like these, students, prospective students, you know, might not know what's available for them to do, what they can study, what techniques, who they can contact. So it's definitely very important.
Yeah, and being in an open environment that's not specifically, you're not within your university's bubble, right? You're not within, you know, a WITS excavation group or within a UNISA excavation group. It's very much like the student development workshops as well, as people from different institutions. And sometimes you get advice from different, you know, from different experts from different fields, and you get ideas about fields of specialization that you wouldn't have considered in your comfort zone, in your little bubble that you're in. So yeah. Any other questions?
I wanted to ask a question about if you've noticed any significant value from a research perspective, where you include members of the public and including members in the public in your archaeological excavations.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you've touched on that throughout
Yeah.
other people's questions. So
Yeah.
I think I just wanted to ask you now was, how do people get involved with heritage works, and are there any other organizations that are similar to that do this public archaeology projects?
Mm-hmm. Sorry. At the moment, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of public archaeology initiatives in Southern Africa. The one that I know specifically, and because he is our partner with the Eastford project, is Prof. Anton van Vollenhoven with Arca Ethnos. And he does research work specifically in the Kruger, where he looks at Steinacker's horse, which was an outpost, also during the Boer War period. And he takes members of the public out into the field for a week and does excavations. But I think in terms of having more of an all-encompassing offering to the public, you have course material, you have other students participating. I'm not aware of any other projects or initiatives at the moment that are doing what we're doing in Southern Africa specifically. There are groups internationally. Public archaeology in America and Europe is quite big. But in South Africa, we're kind of like in just, struggling to get momentum with this. And I'd like to see that change. So anyone who would like to get involved, please contact us via Facebook, email me. Yeah, we're open to chat.
All right.
And then
thank
of
you.
course, sorry, Mpumi.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go for it.
And then Mariette, I also just want to maybe mention again the Eastford excavations happening from the 10th to the 16th of June.
Yes.
And all that information is available on the Heritage Work Facebook page.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And an exciting announcement relating specifically to the Student Development Conference. The activity associated to this lecture is a short essay of 1,000 words that you have to write, explaining to us what is public participation and public engagement archaeology, why is it important, and if you can give us examples of where public participation can be used in one of your own existing projects as a student, as a postgraduate researcher, include that, because we are going to, myself and Corin as Heritage Works, we're going to look at your essays and we're going to select the best one, and whoever is the best essay submission, you can come and join us on Eastford for that week. Okay, so that's the prize for writing a good and convincing essay about why public archaeology matters. And we have great food on site, man. We've got hamburgers, we've got boerewors rolls. If you're vegan, that's cool. We can accommodate you. Just come and join us, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you who'd like to come and visit on the open days, please just pop us an email. You're more than welcome.
Okay, are there any more questions for Mariette? Okay. All right, thank you so much, Mariette. This is a very, very informative presentation.
It's a pleasure.
I feel like we're already sold. We should just come there to Eastford and come dig. At least we are experienced, but we'll welcome everybody else from the public. Let them join, let them know more about Eastford and also public archaeology, and also get a sense of what we do, and that it's not just playing around in the sand for a whole month or so. It is serious stuff. It is a lot of work, and we are grateful for this talk and also for them for listening. And we hope you will join us again for more talks. All right.
Yes. Cool stuff. Thank you, everyone. And yes, keep tuning in to the Student Development Conference for more exciting content. And we'll see you next time.